Hey, Dale, the librarian here. Since we're in an oncoming election era where there's going to be just endless election stuff going on, people are going to be looking at the last election and maybe even previous elections, see if they can tease out trends. When you're looking in national newspapers or local news outlets, what have you, they're going to be taking little samples of census data or election data, and they're going to try and tease it out to these info bits they can use to make a point. How can you look at the census info? If you go to USA.gov, you can find some census data where you can make your own reports and download as Excel. And it's really detailed and it's wonderful. But how can we look at it in a graphical interface where I can just zoom into the United States and see who voted when? We have a database for that. I feel like the old Apple ad. We have a database for that. So library homepage. Make sure that you have logged in if you are off campus, so you might not be able to access what I'm about to show you. Library databases. Letter S, as in Stanley or Susan, and it is called Social Explorer. There are ways where you can create an account, but you're not required to get into the data, so I will show you the basics. You start out with this Explore button right here. This database is relatively new with us, and they've already updated their graphical interface. But essentially what it does is it takes data and it puts it on a map for you so you can take a look. It also includes Alaska. And there's a population, so if you mouse over, you can see there's about 1 1/3 people for every square mile in Alaska. And you can go down and look at Hawaii. So first experiment that you should do, you could put pause on the YouTube video and just mouse over and see the population density of all these places. New Jersey's pretty busy. Utah, not a lot of people out here. A lot of western states. How do you zoom in? This is interesting. I just discovered they have Puerto Rico. That's cool. So I can assume they might have other US entities like Guam, for example. You can zoom in and get to the county level. And then this one is really fascinating because I always assumed as you drive down I-15 heading south that there's just people everywhere. Well, it's just not the case. If you turn left or right, east or west, you're going to be out in the middle of Millard County where there's very few people out there. Or you're going to be in Emery County. So you get the idea. It's kind of fun discovering the world that we live in. What you can do also is change your data set. Oh, by the way, you can zoom in and get down to what I used to think was zip codes, but it's really census tracts. Census tracts are the areas that were counted and grouped together. How they do this is for another lesson, or another way of saying is that I don't know how they pick census tracts. I thought this was zip codes, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. So beware of that. When you switch over to voting, so let me show you. When you click on Change Data, you can go for all these different questions that they have. So gender, income level, all these are voluntary information. So they don't go up and say, that's a nice shirt. You must make over $100,000 a year. No, some of it's dictated by IRS info, but some of them are dictated by self-identified information. So if on the race question, they don't use a scale of, or for age, they don't have like a wrinkle detector. They actually ask how old people are. In a very nice way, so we're not discriminating. You can also go longitudinally back quite a ways and look at previous censuses, but this one we're looking at politics and how people voted. But you can make those correlations, those sexy correlations between one census info and another one. So let's look at votes. Presidential elections, 2016, and you can see how people voted in if they voted Democrat. Let me back out a bit. And you can see Summit County, which has like Park City, is 50% Democrat. Whereas if you go to Salt Lake County, it's 41%. But you can switch by clicking on Change Data, and let's see how the Republicans went. And I would have guessed that Utah County would have been really heavily voting Republican. But that wasn't the case. I mean, it's 50%. That's a big deal, but they're not like the biggest one. So if you go off to Duchesne and Uinta County, the percentages are on an order of like 30% higher. It's quite amazing. So when people are doing political strategy, they would compare different years and see if there was somebody trending up or trending down. And that's where you get all of the rhetoric of battleground states and different segments of voters. You get to go through this database, and it's fun to just cruise around and look for serendipity and then try and make correlations. And then you can do your own journalistic interpretation as well. Fascinating one. If you remember from the last presidential election, we were encouraged in Utah to go third party, and so we did quite in droves. If you see, there was some third party voting, but Utah peaked. We had 21%. What does that mean? I don't know. You get to correlate what that means. But this is my little tutorial. There's all sorts of different things. If you just go down, there's environmental data, cancer rates, health, industry, all sorts of different things. Here's an interesting one. There's slavery. You can see what states. They stopped taking that. Your trivia question for today. Why did they stop taking information on slavery in 1860? I'll let you discover what the answer to that one is if you don't know. Hope you have a good one. Contact me at dale.larson@utah.edu if I can help anything further for your library research needs.